My name is Isabel. I'm 29, and I'm a marketing strategist here in Portland. My life is built on numbers that balance, on data that makes sense. I find comfort in rules. I wish families worked the same way. The moment my mom said it, the whole room just stopped breathing. You're not half the woman your sister is. Ice, just pure, cold ice, right in my chest. Forks clattered against plates and then silence. Even the clock on the wall seemed to freeze. Her words didn't just sting. They were an erasure, an attempt to delete 3 years of my life. I looked up from my plate. My hands weren't even shaking. I looked right at her, my voice perfectly calm, and I said, "Then she can start paying your rent." Chairs scraped. My dad's face. It turned the color of paper. "Rent? What rent?" he whispered. That was the night. The night 3 years of silence finally shattered. But trust me, the truth didn't begin at that table. It started long before, with one desperate phone call I will never, ever forget. Have you ever had to draw a line with your family, one so sharp it actually cut? Tap subscribe, because I really need 2T to know I'm not the only one. Every Friday night, it's the same. The 30-minute drive from my apartment in Portland to my parents' house in the suburbs. It's not really a question. It's not an invitation. It's a tradition, which in my family is just another word for an unbreakable rule. An invisible contract I never signed, but am expected to honor. If I'm 5 minutes late, my phone buzzes. It's Mom. Are you okay? We're waiting. If I let it go to voicemail, maybe because I'm stuck in traffic, or just trying to steal 2 more minutes of silence in my car, the second text comes. This time, from Dad. It's always the same. "This family has a seat for you. Don't leave it empty." It sounds warm, doesn't it? It's not. It's a guilt trip, wrapped in a blanket. That seat doesn't feel like a place of honor. It feels like a trap. A place where I'm required to show up, sit down, and become small. I walk in, and the house smells like Mom's roast chicken. The first thing you see when you enter is the staircase. And on that staircase, you see my family's priorities. It's a shrine, but it's not for the family. It's for my sister, Nina. There she is, in a heavy, polished wood frame. Nina, graduating from law school. Her smile is bright, her cap tilted just so. Beside it, Nina holding a gleaming award at some banquet. Below that, Nina and my parents, beaming, on the day she made partner. Every frame is perfectly dusted, perfectly lit by the hallway light. My achievements? Oh, they're here too. If you walk past the shrine, past the living room, and turn left toward the laundry room, there it is, my college graduation photo. It's in a simple, thin black frame, hanging on the wall that always smells faintly of fabric softener. It's the first thing I see when I take my coat off, and the last thing I see before I leave. A constant reminder of my place. At the dinner table, the performance begins. The conversation is a one-woman show starring Nina. Nina just won a huge case. Nina is thinking of buying a new convertible. Nina might be featured in a magazine. When she speaks, my dad's eyes light up. I mean, they literally change. He leans forward, soaking in every word as if she's telling stories from another, better world. My mom laughs too loud at every joke. She'll reach out and touch Nina's hand, her fingers lingering, like she's holding a trophy, just checking to make sure it's real. And then, eventually, the spotlight swings to me. But it's not a spotlight, it's an interrogation lamp. "You've always been the quiet one, Isabel. You were never as ambitious as your sister, were you? But that's okay." My mom says it with a gentle, pitying smile, as if quiet is a mild, chronic illness. "It's good you're so steady with your marketing job," she'll add. I just nod. I sip my wine. The glass feels cold in my hand. I pretend the comments slide right off me, like water. But they don't. They never do. They stick, like little barbs, right under my skin. Because every time my mom boasts about Nina's success, every time my dad praises her ambition, I am the only person at this table who knows the truth. I am the only one who knows that the steady, quiet, unambitious one is the one paying for the roof over their heads, I'm the only one who knows that my salary, the one they never ask about, is the only thing keeping this entire charade, this entire house, from crumbling into a pile of dust. And that quiet, steady truth. It's the only thing that gets me through the meal. The real story, the one that ended at that dinner table, didn't start with anger. It started with fear. It was 3 winters ago, a Tuesday. I remember because the end of quarter reports were due. It was already past 9 p.m., and a bitter, cold rain was lashing against my office window in downtown Portland. I was exhausted, finishing a 12-hour shift, my eyes burning from the spreadsheet glow. My phone lit up on the desk. Mom. I almost let it ring. It was too late for a "why aren't you at home" call, but something made me pick it up. Mom, is everything okay? Silence. And then, a sound I had never heard from her before, a choked sob. My blood went cold. Mom, what's wrong? Isabel, she whispered, her voice trembling, ragged. It's your father. He lost the big contract, the one we were counting on. I sank into my office chair. The rain suddenly sounded deafening. He didn't want to tell anyone, she continued, the words tumbling out. He's so proud. But the mortgage payment is due, and… Isabel, if we miss this payment, the bank… They said they'd send a notice. We might lose the house. Lose the house. The house with the shrine to Nina. The house where I was the quiet one. The house that held every single memory, good and bad. And then, the line that would define the next 3 years of my life. Can you help us? Just at this once? Just to get us through this month? I didn't even think. That's the truth. I didn't pause. I didn't ask questions. I was the responsible one, the steady one. This is what steady people do. Yes, I said. Of course. How much? My own savings account flashed in my mind, the one labeled my down payment. It had taken me 4 years to save that money, 4 years of packing my own lunch and skipping vacations. It was my future. I'll handle it, Mom, I said, my voice sounding much calmer than I felt. I hung up. I didn't even put my coat on. I just opened my personal banking app, the cursor hovering over my dream, and transferred the money. The confirmation screen glowed. My future, gone in a single click. The next day, Mom called, crying with relief. You're a lifesaver, Isabel. A true lifesaver. We'll pay you back, I promise, as soon as things stabilize. I believed her. But this once became a pattern. A month later, the call didn't come. A text did. Just this month, sweetheart. Next month will be better, I promise. I sent the money. The month after that, another text. The "I promise" was gone. I hated that monthly text. I hated the pit of dread it opened in my stomach. I hated the lie "next month will be better" that I knew was a lie. So, after the 4th month, I did something to protect myself. Not the money, my heart. I went into my banking app. I set up an automatic transfer. $2,000. To be paid on the 28th of every single month. I didn't tell them I did it. The texts for help stopped. The money just vanished from my account. A quiet bleed, a silent sacrifice. It felt easier. It felt easier to bleed quietly than to have the same conversation, hear the same lie, and feel the same resentment every 30 days. It was my secret, my burden, and I thought it was what a good daughter, the quiet one, was supposed to do. 3 years is a long time. It's long enough for a habit to become a cage. That automatic transfer wasn't just money, it was my future, bleeding out, $2,000 at a time. I stopped looking at my own savings. What was the point? There was nothing left to save. When my friends planned a trip to Mexico, I told them I was too busy with a project at work. The project was my parents' mortgage. When my old laptop started to die, I didn't replace it. I just dealt with the lag. Every dollar I didn't spend on myself was a dollar I could spend on their comfort. I was disappearing. I was fading into the background of my own life, becoming the quiet, steady daughter they always said I was. I was a utility, a function, the invisible safety net holding everyone else up, and they were all too happy to pretend I wasn't there. One night, after a particularly draining Friday dinner, one where Nina had announced her new car, and my dad had toasted to true ambition, I came home, and I couldn't breathe. The air in my own apartment felt thick, suffocating. I sat on my sofa in the dark. And for the first time in 3 years, I did the math. I opened my banking app. I went to the transfer history. My finger scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled. Page after page. Monthly payment, $2,000. Monthly payment, $2,000. Monthly payment, $2,000. 36 times. My calculator app glowed in the dark. 36 multiplied by 2,000. 7,200,000 yuan. The number just hung there on the screen. It wasn't just a number. It was my down payment. It was the apartment I wanted to buy. It was the trips I never took. It was my independence. Gone. And that's when the real betrayal hit me. It was a cold, physical spike, straight through my chest. It wasn't just the money. It was the silence. In 3 years and 1,095 days, not one person had said, "Thank you, Isabel." Not once. They never mentioned the money. They never asked if I was okay. They never acknowledged that the quiet one was single-handedly keeping their life, their house, their pride, intact. They just took, and they smiled, and they passed the roast chicken, and they praised my sister. My hand was shaking, but it wasn't from sadness anymore. It was rage. A cold, clear, precise rage. I opened the banking app again. I navigated to the scheduled payments tab. There it was, a single-line item, nestled between my car insurance and my rent. To Mom and Dad. Amount, $2,000. Frequency, monthly. My thumb hovered over the cancel button. This was it. The wire I was balancing on. The invisible contract. Are you sure? A little voice in my head, the good daughter voice, screamed at me. They'll lose the house. They'll be on the street. It's your family. But another voice, one I hadn't heard in 3 years, spoke over it. It was quiet, it was steady, and it was done. My thumb pressed down. The confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? I stared at the words. Yes. The screen refreshed. Payment canceled. I leaned my head back against the sofa and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since that first phone call. For 3 years, I had tied my worth to that payment, proof I was a good daughter. Now that the cord was cut, who was I? I felt light. I was $72,000 poorer. I was tired, and I had no idea what would happen next. But for the first time in a very long time, I was free. The first week, I expected the call. The angry, confused, Isabel, where is the money? It never came. I woke up the morning after I hit cancel, and the silence in my apartment was deafening. My first thought wasn't relief, it was panic. What have I done? To stop myself from undoing it, from calling them and apologizing, I put on my running shoes. I went straight out the door. I ran along the Willamette River. The air was sharp, that cold, damp Portland morning air that cuts right into your lungs. And with every step, every painful, gasping breath, it felt like I was physically pushing something out of my body. It felt like I was peeling away the weight of those 3 years. The fog, the guilt, the silence. I wasn't just running, I was escaping. When I got back to my apartment, I was freezing, my lungs burned, but my head was clear. I knew I couldn't just stop being the invisible daughter. I had to start being someone else. That week, I signed up for a cooking class at a community center downtown. It was random. It was on a Tuesday night. It was perfect. The first class, we made soup. I was terrible. I put in too much salt. But as I stood there, stirring a pot, surrounded by 8 total strangers, I realized something. No one in this room knew my sister, Nina. No one knew my parents. No one knew about the $72,000. They just knew me as Isabel, the woman in the green sweater who clearly had no idea how to chop an onion. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt peace. It was a found family, even if we were just strangers in an apron. It was a place where I was just me. I took that new energy to work. I stopped just getting by. I started achieving. I threw myself into my marketing work, digging into the data, finding patterns no one else saw. I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My spreadsheets were clean. My reports were sharp. My strategies were working. My boss noticed. He wasn't a warm guy, but he was fair. One evening, he stopped by my desk as I was packing up. He just pointed at the report on his screen. "This is good, Isabel," he said. "I like your precision. You see things other people overlook." I almost burst into tears right there. It was one sentence, but it was praise that was earned. It wasn't a comparison. It wasn't a consolation prize. It was a fact. It was real. 2 months later, that same precision changed my life. A recruiter from a tech startup in Seattle reached out on LinkedIn. They'd seen my work, my portfolio. They were building a new marketing analytics team, and they wanted someone to lead it. The offer was staggering, 40% more than I was making, plus company shares, ownership. I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask my parents for advice. I didn't even tell Nina. I signed the contract. I packed up my Portland apartment in one frantic weekend. Boxing up my old life felt like shedding a skin. I sold the sofa I'd sat on when I hit cancel. I threw away the cheap wine glasses I used after those Friday dinners. My new apartment in Seattle was small. It was modern, all glass and steel, overlooking a sliver of the Sound. It was completely empty. And as I stood in the middle of the living room, with just an echo for company, I smiled. It was 100% mine. No one's shadow could reach me here. For 6 months, I was just Isabel. I was the new team lead in Seattle. I was the woman who finally learned how to make a decent soup at my new cooking class. I was the person who explored my new city, who found a favorite coffee shop, who slept soundly through the night. The new job was intense, in the best way. My life was about data, strategy, and deadlines. It was clean. It was logical. My parents hadn't called once about the money. The silence was absolute. I'd come to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally figured it out on their own. Maybe they'd been embarrassed. I thought that chapter was finally, blessedly, closed. I was wrong. It wasn't closed. They were just rewriting the ending. I was in a meeting, presenting a new quarter strategy, when my phone buzzed on the table. A text from a number I didn't have saved. "Hi dear, I just thought you should see this." I frowned. I didn't recognize the name at the bottom, Mrs. Whitaker. It took me a second. Mrs. Whitaker, my parents' elderly neighbor, the kind woman who always gave me cookies when I was a kid. A photo loaded. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it was physically ripped out of my chest. It was my parents' house, the house I'd saved, and stretched across the entire front porch, tied to the pillars, was a massive vinyl banner. Big, garish, red and gold letters. "Congratulations, Nina Hart, for preserving the family home." I couldn't breathe. The boardroom, the faces of my colleagues, the sound of my own presentation, it all just dissolved. The screen in my hand trembled. My vision blurred. Preserving the family home. This wasn't just ignorance. It wasn't forgetfulness. This was a lie. A deliberate, calculated, public lie. They hadn't just ignored what I had done. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had erased me. They had taken my sacrifice, my $72,000, my 3 years of silence, and they had handed it to her, to Nina, like a trophy she hadn't even competed for. I managed to say, "Excuse me for a moment," and walked out of the meeting. I didn't cry. The anger was too cold for that. It was a perfect, crystalline clarity. I went back to my desk, sat down, and opened the bottom drawer. Tucked in the back was the one thing I'd brought from Portland. The one thing I couldn't bring myself to throw away. A single, plain, manila folder. I opened it. The payment logs, the bank statements, the screenshots of my mother's texts, every "just this once, sweetheart," every empty promise, my proof. I stared at it, the paper trail of my own erasure. I had my new life, my new job, my new peace, and they were trying to steal the past too. My phone rang. This time, I knew the name. Leah. My cousin. I answered, my voice steady. "Hello, Leah." "Isabel." She sounded nervous. "Hey. So, you're not going to like this. But I thought you should hear it from me, not, you know." "I saw the banner," I said. She let out a breath. "Oh, God. Okay. Well, it gets worse. They're hosting a big family appreciation dinner this weekend. In Seattle, actually. At that fancy Italian place downtown. The whole family is flying in. A dinner, I repeated. My fingers were tracing the edge of a bank statement. Yeah. She paused, and I could hear the shame in her voice. It's to honor Nina. For saving the house. She paused again. Isabel. They asked me to make the slideshow. I said nothing. Do you want to see it? Yes, I said. Send it to me. A minute later, the file landed in my inbox. I clicked it. Pictures of the family. Pictures of my parents. Pictures of Nina. Smiling. Triumphant. I clicked to the very last slide. There it was. Glowing, gold, script font against a black background. In gratitude to Nina Hart, the daughter who saved our home. I leaned back in my chair. The rage wasn't hot anymore. It was focused. It was data. They wanted to honor her. They wanted a celebration. They wanted a slideshow. Fine, I'll give them a slideshow. I didn't go back to my meeting. I sat at my desk in my Seattle apartment. The lights of the city starting to blur in the window. I opened my truth folder. I opened Leah's slideshow file. And for the next 2 hours, I worked. This was my territory, not a family dinner, not a world of unspoken rules and emotional manipulation. This was data. This was a presentation. And I was a very good marketing strategist. I deleted the last slide. In gratitude to Nina Hart. Delete. I created a new one. A simple, clean, corporate blue background. Title. Financial Contributions, 2020-2023. I added the next slide. A timeline. 36 identical blocks, one for each month. Monthly payment, $2,000. I added the next slide. A simple, brutal chart. Total contribution, $72,000. I added the next slides. The proof. I copy-pasted the screenshots of my mother's messages. Just this once, sweetheart. Next month will be better, I promise. We might lose the house. I worked until my knuckles were white. The anger wasn't hot anymore. It was a tool. It was precise. I added one last slide, a simple, high-resolution photo of the house, the one Mrs. Whitaker had sent me, with the banner still on it. But I cropped the banner out. It was just the house. And beneath it, one line of text. This was my contribution. Don't forget it. I saved the new file. I dragged it onto a small, black USB drive. I clicked eject, and I dropped the drive into my purse. The restaurant was downtown, expensive, and warm. It was full of flowers and laughter, and the smell of garlic and wine. Through the window, I could see the entire extended family. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. I walked in and stood by the back wall, near the coat check. No one saw me. They were all focused on the front, where my father stood, holding a microphone, his face flushed with pride. My mother sat at the head table, pearls on, beaming, and Nina. Nina was in a stunning emerald green dress. She was glowing, untouchable. "We are so blessed," my father said into the mic, his voice booming. "Truly blessed. To have a daughter like Nina. In our darkest time, she preserved our home, our legacy." Applause. Clinking glasses. My mother wiped a tear from her eye. "And now," Dad said, gesturing to the large white projector screen, Leah put together a little something. The lights dimmed. The slideshow began. Pictures of the family. Holidays. Nina's graduation. Again. Laughter rippled through the room. I just stood by the wall, my hand in my purse, my fingers closed around the small, cold, plastic USB drive. I waited. The final slide of Leah's original presentation came up, the one with the gold text. "In gratitude to Nina Hart, the daughter who saved our home." The applause started. My father raised his glass. "To Nina!" And that's when my slide hit the screen. Financial contributions. 2020, 2023. The applause died. Not all at once, but in a staggered, confused wave. A fork clattered against a plate, and the sound was like a gunshot in the sudden, dead silence. I stepped forward. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. Every head in the room, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins turned to me. "What is this?" my father whispered, fumbling with the microphone. The next slide clicked on. The timeline. 36 payments. The next slide. 7,200,000,000. The next. My mother's desperate texts, projected 10 feet high for our entire family to read. I heard a gasp. It was my mother. Her hand was clamped over her mouth, her pearls suddenly looking like a noose. My father's face drained, going from proud to pale to a mottled, sick gray. Nina. Her perfect, glowing face just crumpled. I stopped near the projector, my voice calm, clear, and carrying in the dead quiet room. If the truth embarrasses you, I said, looking right at my parents, that is not my fault. My father stammered, his voice cracking over the microphone. We never asked. You didn't have to. I cut him off. The quiet one was gone. You just let me. For 3 years. You took my money, and you built your pride on my silence. I looked at Nina. I looked at my parents. Not anymore. I walked up to the laptop, unplugged my USB drive, and tucked it back into my purse. The screen went black. I turned, and without looking at anyone else, I walked toward the exit. The crowd of faces blurred. Isabel. It was my mother's voice. A desperate, broken whisper. I didn't stop. I didn't even turn my head. I pushed open the heavy glass door. The cold Seattle air hit my face like a wave of clean, honest water. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Behind me, I could hear the muffled sound of the restaurant erupting. I walked to my car, my reflection flashing in the dark glass. The woman staring back at me. She didn't look invisible anymore. She looked free. It was 2 days. 2 days of absolute, deafening silence from my family. I didn't get angry texts. I didn't get tearful voicemails. I think they were in shock. Honestly, I was just working. I went back to my job. I ran my data. I led my meetings. And with every hour that passed, the truth I delivered at that dinner felt less like a bomb and more like a foundation. My foundation. Then, on Sunday morning, there was a knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, I froze. It was them, my parents, standing in the sterile, modern hallway of my Seattle apartment building. They looked small, lost. My father's shoulders were slumped, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. My mother's eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, and she was clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. I opened the door. I didn't invite them in. I just stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. We stood there, the three of us, in a silence that felt heavier than any argument. Finally, my mother spoke. Her voice was a wisp. A trembling, raw thing I'd never heard before. Isabel. She swallowed, hard. We're sorry. We were wrong. My father just stared at the floor, nodding, as if the movement was all he could manage. We shouldn't have been quiet, my mother whispered. We shouldn't have given Nina the credit. It was you. It was always you. She took a shaky breath, as if bracing herself. We talked to the bank. We want to put your name on the house deed. With ours, you deserve it. It's yours, too. She said it like it was the answer. The grand prize. The legal document that would fix everything. And in that moment, looking at these two people who I had spent my entire adult life trying to please, trying to earn, I realized the most profound, simple truth. I didn't want it. I didn't need their apology to be whole. I didn't need their guilt to feel justified. And I damn sure didn't need my name on a piece of paper for a house I had already paid for in every way that mattered. The power had shifted. Not because I'd won a fight, but because I'd simply left the battlefield. I shook my head gently. I have a home now, I said. My voice was soft. I gestured behind me, at my small, clean apartment, with its view of the city. I don't need to be tied to that one anymore. My father finally looked up, his eyes glistening. My mother's lip trembled. There was so much they wanted to say. I could see it, the excuses, the justifications, but none of it mattered. I never needed the deed, Mom, I said. And this was the final, absolute truth. I just needed respect. And for the first time, they both nodded. Not in defense, not in denial, but in understanding. It was a terrible, painful understanding. It was too late, but it was enough. they left. I closed the door, and the lock clicking into place was the most satisfying sound I've ever heard. That night, I sat on my tiny balcony, a glass of wine in my hand. I watched the Seattle skyline flicker to life, the ferries gliding across the dark water like ghosts. The city hummed below me, a sound of life and energy and indifference. It didn't care about my family drama. It just was. And I felt calm, balanced, like a set of numbers that, after 3 long, painful years, finally added up. I wasn't the quiet daughter. I wasn't the invisible one. I was just Isabel, seen, steady, and free. I thought about my newfound family. The strangers in my cooking class who laughed when I burned the bread. My boss, who saw my precision and gave me a chance. Even my cousin, Leah, who risked the family's wrath to send me that one critical file. I realized my worth was never up for debate. It was never measured by my parents' praise or by Nina's stolen achievements. It was written in every 12-hour shift I pulled. It was in every dollar I saved and every dollar I gave. It was written in every quiet act of strength that no one ever clapped for. And I didn't need them to clap anymore. I could clap for myself. So, if you've ever been made to feel invisible, if you're the quiet one holding everything together, remember this. Silence does not mean weakness. And walking away, that is not losing. Sometimes, it's the only way to win. If this story hit home, tell me where you're listening from, and hit that subscribe button. You are not alone.